all of the sponsors, just to say that we thank them. Okay, and just specifically, we had the year, Konigsberg, Ed Goldberg, Paul and Bob Romberg, Malcolm Mann, many friends of Toby Paris, friends of Michael Levy, friends of Gittler, Cheryl Schur, grand uncle Marsha Federbush, friends of Joe Wolf, Sharon Lisker, Ruth Burian, Judy and Ed Reborn, Jill and Harry Meltzer, Big Pizer, Josh and Carol Simon, Mel and Harry Heller, Andrea and David Dolney, Sandra, Marty Levine, Brendan, Ed Parver, grandchildren of Shepatovsky, Sid Paris, Mark and Catherine Linder, Mimi Schiff, Sharon Smith, Rabbi Moshe Kranzler, and that's it. Okay. Right. Okay, so where are we? All right, we're on about the following 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down on Study Zion, Amud Aleph, and Karen is trying to reach the other people to get them on. Okay, but right. Okay, so we finished with Tiyufta, Deraba, Tiyufta. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel is going to now make a general statement, and this is what's going to be challenged, right? Namely, Amar Shmuel, he says, Kol, all other offerings, okay, can be compared in a situation, shebechatat meta, okay, that if we're dealing with a situation of a chatas offering, that, okay, and that chatas offering dies, okay, can we make the parallel, but Pesach karev shlamim, that the same way we have to, if we bring a animal for a chatas, that was either the offspring of a sin offering, a substitute for a sin offering, the owner died, the owner made atonement through another offering, or a sin offering more than a year old, all those animals are pasul, and you have to let the animal be put into a cell and die on its own, okay? And Shmuel saying the parallel towards a Korban Pesach would be that you put the animal and bring it as a shlami. In every situation where other offerings, okay, in situations of a chatat, you would put it out to pasture, but Pesach nami roeh. Regarding the Pesach, it also would go to pasture. Rabbi Yochanan Amar. Rabbi Yochanan disagrees, and he says, Ein ha-Pesach karev shlamim ele shenimtza achar shchita. Okay, that a Korban Pesach got lost and then wasn't found till after its tamura was slaughtered. That animal, that original animal, has to go to pasture. Aval kodem shchita, lo. But if it was found before the time of the animal being slaughtered, before the tamura was slaughtered, no, it doesn't go to pasture. It doesn't go to become a shlami. Now,
Rabbi,
yeah.
Can I just interrupt to find out where we are?
Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. About 7, 8 lines down on the top of the Amud. Okay? Shmuel has made a general statement, okay, that other animals, other offerings that were brought for a sin offering, if it's inappropriate, he says that animal is put aside and allowed to die. And the parallel with regards to a Korban Pesach would be that that animal is brought as a shlami. Okay? But where an animal goes to pasture, Korban Pesach goes to pasture. Rabbi Yochanan challenged him and said, no, the only time the Korban Pesach goes to pasture, okay, is the question of if it was brought after the tamura was already slaughtered. Okay, but no, now we see a challenge. Mat kifla Rav Yosef uklalahu. Do we say then that Shmuel's statement is a overall arching principle? V'harei chatat she'avra shnata. Azla. But we have an example, according to some, where if an animal that was brought for chatas was more than a year old, it's sent out to pasture. The Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, he says, chatat she'avrashnata, a chatas offering that was brought past its 1 year of appropriate age, ro'ino taki iluhi omedet b'beit hakfarot, v'ro'eh. We see it as if it was found in a cemetery, and therefore it's not viable, and therefore it's put out to pasture. The ilu b'Pesach, however, in regards to Korban Pesach, what do we say there? Ki hai gavna krev shlamim. In a similar situation, do we say that it's brought as a shlamim offering? The Tanya, because we have a braita that says kesev, that if it's a lamb, the rabota to Pesach la'aliyah, that says that means to include the fat tail as part of the Korban Pesach offering. Okay, Keshehu omer im hakesev. But when he says if we have a lamb, the rabota to Pesach she'avrash nato ushlamim haba'im michamat Pesach l'chol mitzvat shlamim she'tu'unin smicha. So I'll come back to that. But the additional word of if implies that we include a Korban Pesach that's more than its year old. And in that case, okay, it has to be brought as shlamim. And if it's brought as shlamim, okay, along with, instead of the Korban Pesach, then it has to fulfill all of the requirements of a shlamim. Namely, it needs smicha, hands-on, it needs nesachim, libations, tnufa chazeh v'shok, and it needs the waving of the thigh and the breast. Now, kashahu omer im, if it says if, if and goat, if sika inyan, then there's an interruption in the discussion in the Torah. And what does that teach us? Limeid al ha'ez she'ein ta'un aliyah, that it comes to teach us that the goat, when it's offered as the Korban Pesach, it does not require the fat tail and the areas by it. Okay? Amarle. So he says back to him, Kika Amar Shmuel. Don't you understand? He said that when Shmuel made his principle, Ba'avudim, he was talking about animals that had been consecrated and then somehow got lost. But the Chuyin lo Amar. But he did not refer it to a situation where an animal was consecrated, but then it was put off. Why? He says, Va'abud mi mishkachad la. And do we really find that kind of a situation where the animal is lost? So the Gemara answers, V'harei avuda b'sha'at hafrasha, that perhaps the animal get lost during the time of the separation. In other words, the time it was designated, okay, and it was the designation of the Tmura, because you did not have the original animal. The Rabbanan de la Ra'aya Azla. In that case, according to the rabbis, that original animal, if it's found again, goes out to pasture. Ditnan, because they teach, according to the Mishnah, if rish chatato va'avda, if one separated and designated an animal as a chatas, and then it became lost, v'hifrish acheret tachteha, and then he separated another one in its place. Couldn't reach Marvin?
No.
Okay, the tmura, nimtzeit harishona, and then the first one, the original, is found again. V'harei shtehen omdot, and here the two of them are both consecrated animals. Okay, so he could really choose one or the other as his chatas. So what does he do with the other one? Achat mehen tikrav, one of them gets offered, ushniya tamut, and the second one gets put aside until it dies. Divrei Rebbe. That's the view of Rebbe. But the sages say, Ein chatat meta, but the sages hold that for that animal to be allowed to die, that's only a situation where the owners had gained atonement through some other animal. Okay? In other words, perhaps through a tamura. Ha kodem shenit kapru ba'alim ro'eh. Therefore, here, okay, if you now have the two animals together, okay, and you use one for your korban chatas, especially if that was the original one, says the chachamim, ro'eh, okay, that second animal doesn't get allowed to die, but goes to pasture. Ve'ilu Pesach, whereas in regards to korban Pesach, heichad avad v'nimtza achar chatzot, where the animal got lost, but then the original animal that had been consecrated was found after midday, kodem shchita, before that animal was slaughtered. Because remember, we said chatzot is the time when the slaughtering would begin. Karev shlamim, that animal should be brought as a shlamim. Shmuel karebi svirale. This seems to imply that Shmuel holds the same view as Rebbe. The Amar Avuda Lamita Azla, that where Rebbe says any animal that becomes lost, okay, and is not found in time for its slaughter, and you use an alternative animal, then the original must be set aside to die on its own. So the Gemara raises a following challenge. Vaha kol avuda l'Rebbe meta. And here, do we really say that Rebbe says that all lost animals eventually, in that situation, the other animal is going to die? Ve'ilu b'Pesach, whereas, however, with Pesach, heichad avad kodem chatzot, perhaps where it's such in our situation where it became lost before midday, v'nimtza kodem chatzot, and then that original animal was found before midday, ro'eh, maybe in that case, then it should go to pasture. What happens? Kodem chatzot lav avudhu kidarabah. We would say if it's found before midday, it's really not considered lost, just as Rava said. The Amar Rava, as he says, Avedat Laila, Lav Shma Avedah, that an animal that perhaps got lost during the night, okay, is not really considered lost because you've gotten it back in time before the Zman of midday, which is the Zman Ra'ui L'Shchita. Ela Ro'eh L'Rebbe, okay? Hechi Mishkachet La. So therefore, in regards to a situation where an animal may go out to pasture, according to Rebbe, what kind of a situation might that be, right? Kidda Rabbi Oshaya, that's like the view of Rabbi Oshaya. The Amar Rabbi Oshaya, Hifrish Shtei Chataot La'achrayut. If someone at the same time set aside two animals as chatas offerings, and the reason he did two was to have a guarantee. Metkaper ba'achat mehen, he becomes atoned through one of them, ushniya tir'eh, and the second one goes out to pasture. Vaha, but here he says, ilu b'Pesach, whereas in regards to the Pesach offering, ki hai gavna, karev shlamim. In this similar case, we say that it would be offered as a shlamim. Ela Shmuel karabi Shimon svirale. Therefore, we must say that Shmuel perhaps hold like Rabbi Shimon, who says as follows: Da'amar chamesh chataot meto, that there are 5 situations where the chatas offering, okay, the original animal that got lost, okay, and then is found, okay, and you've used a tmura in its place, that animal is to be allowed to die on its own. And we said it was one case if it was the offspring of a sin offering. The second, if it was a substitute for a sin offering. The third, if the owner died. The fourth, if it's the owner gained atonement through another offering. And the fifth, if the sin offering was older than a year old. Okay, now what happens? Vaha ro'ela Rabbi Shimon litle klal. That would therefore seem to imply that in that situation, Rabbi Shimon never holds that a chatas can go out to pasture, and therefore likewise not the korban pesach, certainly. Shmuel nami chada ka'amar. And Shmuel also actually was only saying one thing. Kol, in other words, again, all offerings, any offering that might be brought shebechatat meta, okay, that if it were brought for the purpose of a chatas, it got lost, the original, and we had to bring a substitute, okay, then one animal, okay, would be allowed to die on its own. But Pesach, regarding the Korban Pesach, Karev Shlamim, that extraneous, I'll say, animal that is not offered has to be offered instead as Shlamim. Umay Kamashmala, and what therefore does it teach us? La'afuke mid Rabbi Yochanan, that it excludes the view of Rabbi Yochanan, who said it depended on when the animal was found. Da'amar, who says, Ein ha'pesach karev shlamim, ela shenimtza achar shchita, where Rabbi Yochanan said that the Pesach is only brought and offered as a shlamim when it's found after the slaughter of the replacement. Aval kodem shchita, lo, but before the slaughter, no. Alma, therefore, shchita kava. That seems to mean that the slaughter is what is fixing the time. Kamash melan chatzot kava. This therefore comes to teach us that midday, when the slaughtering can begin, that's what fixes the time. Now, lishna acharina, we have another version of the same discussion. And here it goes, a little clearer. Ve'ilu b'Pesach, and in regards to the Pesach offering, Heicha da'avad, where it becomes lost, v'nimtza achar chatzot, right? Kodem shchita, and when it's found after midday, before the slaughtering, yikarev shlamim, let it be offered as a shlamim. Shmuel kiraba savala. Therefore, Shmuel must hold like Rava, right? The Amar shchita kava, who says that the time of the slaughtering fixes this situation. So the Gemara picks up.
Yeah.
Vahami de ka'ama Rabbi Yochanan Allah. And here it's where Rabbi Yochanan said about this the following: Ein ha'pesach karev shlamim ela shenimtza achar shchita. That the Pesach is not brought and offered as a shlamim unless it was found after slaughter. Aval kodem shchita lo, but before slaughter, no. Alma shchita kava. Therefore, this seems to imply that the actual act of slaughter is what fixes the time, fixes the occasion. Miklal, the Shmuel savar chatzot kava. From that, since Shmuel disagrees with him, that must tell us that indeed Shmuel holds the fact that chatzot, that midday, is what fixes the time as to which happens with which offering. Ele Shmuel karabi svirale. But rather, says the Gemara, doesn't it seem that Shmuel must be of the same view of Rebbe? The Amar avuda lamita azla. That a lost animal, right, goes to slaughter, allows to die. Vaha kol avudin l'Rabbi meitim. And here we know that Rebbe holds that all lost animals are allowed simply to die. Ve'ilu Pesach, but with regards to Pesach, Heichad avad kodem chatzot, where it got lost before midday, v'nimtza kodem chatzot, and it was found before midday, ro'eh, it goes to pasture. Kasavar, that seems to give the impression, the man that he holds, kodem chatzot, lav avudhu, that before midday, it's not considered lost. Ukasavar chatzot kava. And that seems to tell us that he held, again, Shmuel, that chatzot, midday, was the fixed time. Okay. Now, I'm going to have a stop there. Okay. The next, I could go, if we had juggled it otherwise, we would have gone over to Tzadichet, but I think given that it's Erev Pesach, Purim, and everything, okay, we wish everybody a Chag Sameach. If the other guys need, okay, to get on, I'm more than willing to go over it for them too. Okay, take care, everybody.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Green. Thank you.